Welcome to the OC. My name's Phil, and this is my co-host Cory, and we are Ordered Chaos Podcast. How are you, Cory?
I'm well, Philip, and you?
Oh, if I was any better, I'd be you. Or somebody rich and famous, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's what I am, rich and famous.
We're not
infamous,
telling everybody
I guess, a type
yet.
of fame.
You are infamous, like Jesse James.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Both, yeah, let's run with it. What's in the news?
Well, so one of the things in the news is Ottawa's back in the red. So for those who care about COVID, Ottawa is in the red zone.
So red, explain, because I don't follow, I don't really do a lot. So
it's a color I can't see properly, Phil.
Well, I know. You're colorblind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are.
So it's supposed to be more restrictions. So with the current state, it was something like 10% or 10 people were going to be allowed in restaurants, but the mayor came to an agreement saying, okay, you can allow 50% or 50 people. I can't remember if it's percentage or people.
In the red?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it used to be way more restrictive, and I think they realized that the super restrictive lockdowns don't help.
No, it doesn't seem to be. I don't know. It just makes
the third wave though. So there's no fourth wave as far as I know.
Which wave do you want? Yeah, well, our cases were up in Ontario today. They were like 1,800 or something.
Aren't you guys in one of the red zones or the end zones or something?
We're apparently, I think we're in yellow. I mean, we were for a long time, way longer than everybody else. We had an outbreak of the new strain.
That was at the apartment complex on Lakeshore, right?
The Lancelot Inn, yeah. And there was like 2 people died. They were older people, of course. Nonetheless, they died. 20-some cases came out of there, maybe more. I'm not sure, but apparently they've all been, vaccinated and taken care of. Like the city, I think, did a good job trying to, isolate everything, and it wasn't very nice. But well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It's always going to be something. I think the third wave, if we look at the Spanish flu, it was a big one, right?
Yeah, I think our records aren't great. I think we've got some. After this, though, we should know how to properly handle a pandemic. We'll be able to do an after-action review and find out what we did right, wrong.
Yeah, and I don't see how 3 waves and we're done. I don't see that. I think that you're going to see a continuous ripple effect. Right? So.
But the idea with the waves, my understanding is that what will happen will be statistically insignificant. So once the waves are done, you're not going to be able to plot necessarily what's happening because everybody who's going to get killed by it or suffer extreme have already had it, right? Or the country's adapted or something. That's my understanding why it comes in the 3 waves. I don't know on that though.
I know that it just sort of disappeared. The 1812 or 1912, sorry, or 1918. Oh, here, go.
War of 1812, Spanish flu. We burnt the White House.
There's so much stuff. We certainly did. Us Canadians, you betcha. So there was a big protest today in Toronto as well. Anti-maskers protesting the lockdowns, all that good stuff. Lots of folks out there. That's in the news. I'm not sure that helps, but you have a right. You have a right to protest. It makes us
wait till the vaccines. Wait till people are refusing vaccines.
I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think people are going to refuse it, and it's your body. Unfortunately, the more people that decide to refuse it, then the less immunity we have as a nation. So
true.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about Princess Diana, murder or mishap.
I thought that was pretty clever when you came up with that, Phil. Not the whole Princess Diana thing, but just the tagline.
Yeah, and it turns out that one of our subscribers, Jason Pretty, did make a suggestion. So thank you very much, Mr. Pretty. He did say that, it's kind of relevant. And
he is a big Princess Di fan, I'm sure. He probably has all the commemorative
plates. I believe
plates.
he knows the royal family and is known to wear a crown or a tiara sometimes. Yeah. But thank you very much, Mr. Pretty, Jason. Yeah. So, but I mean, we've been kind of looking at it too, but you were right, because you'd said something about the comet. I'm like, I remember reading, but everything starts to become a blur after a while. So yeah,
I was looking for finger emojis in the comment, and I'm like, oh, wait,
finger emoji.
Phil wants to do Princess Di.
Yeah. Well, look at me. I mean, how could I not be a huge Princess Di fan?
Huge closet Princess Di fan.
My grandmother was. She loved her. I mean, there are people that are so passionate about this woman, and she did a lot of good stuff. So, in her time, and she was a fairly regular. I mean, even though she was royalty before she married, like she had royal ties.
She wasn't royalty. I think she was nobility. So the whole,
I don't know.
I always considered royalty to be you're part of the royal family, whereas nobility, you're part of the upper houses, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, we'll have to look into that. I thought the House of Spencer, because she was Diana Spencer.
Fraser Spencer or Francis Spencer, something.
We'll have to look into it. Yes, we know our stuff, man.
I am not a British monarchist, so I don't know.
Neither am I. I do find the story interesting.
The coolest moment I had, though, was when I was at an international conference and I was liaising with the drinking with the UK rep, and he made a comment and he said, "We're both loyal subjects to the crown." I thought for a second, that we are.
Kinda.
Well, who's our supreme leader? She's on our money.
Well, other than that, we decide our own laws, man.
I know, but there ain't a picture of Justin Trudeau in the Chippewa Armory when I was a reservist that I had to sleep with my head towards, not my feet towards.
That's right. No song saying "God save Trudeau." Right. So Charles and Diana are wed. He's 32, and she's not. I think she was like 21. She was young.
I think there was like a 12-year difference.
Yeah, she was young. Charles had been just, sowing his wild oats for many, many years. And his mother and father are like, oh my God, Charles, stop it. So yeah, and he meets her, and he had a thing.
She was a kindergarten teacher or something, wasn't she?
She was a teacher. Yeah. She was a fairly regular person, had a job. I'm not exactly sure how they met. I mean, our podcast is more on her death, so I didn't really get into much of the. I mean, you can read forever. There is so much out there.
If somebody would like to leave in the comments how they met and how it's not creepy that some dude in his 30s picked up a kindergarten teacher in her 20s, by all means.
For the record, she was a teacher, not a student.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
For the record. So, but he had been seeing who he's now married to, Camilla. And he was seeing her and on and off again. And he left for the Navy. And for whatever reason, the royal family didn't really care for Camilla. She had no.
I think it was a divorce. Was she divorced or something? Was there some?
I'm not sure, but she was not of like their status, right? So they had money, but she wasn't. Like, you got to remember, like, these royals, they're looking like, okay, everything is about how they appear. Everything is about status. Everything is about status quo, keeping things,
lineages. I know lineages are big because you don't want to screw stuff up.
Yeah. And so you have like Charles, who's sort of like this playboy who's running around.
And he's only a playboy because he's happened to be the heir apparent. It's
stupid rich.
Well, not even stupid rich, rich, but
I mean, I think that it's not a matter of. It's funny because you go, well, what's the value of the crown, right? And you go, well, they don't make that much, but you're the head of that country. Like, there is no want or need for anything. Like, everything is like
you're the unelected official of that country. So that's the thing. Like, it's not like
monarch,
you can be,
man.
Yeah, that's right. Can't get rid of us.
So he meets her. Well, anyway, back to Camilla, because it's kind of important. because the fucking dude ends up marrying Camilla after all of this. And, there's a lot that is to be said about their relationship. And I think most people focus on their relationship. And both of them had their downfalls. Charles, almost from the get-go, basically would, he remained kind of having visits with Camilla. He continued to see her, even though that she became married. And the two of them decided that they would continue to see each other. Diana, basically spent a lot of time alone for many years, right? And then I think Diana got fed up, and then she started to do her own thing. And I think it was 1996 they finally divorced. Like, it was official. They separated in 92 or 93, which was unheard of. Last time that shit happened, like, somebody lost their head. And divorces are not like, it's a big embarrassment. And, it's probably one of the reasons why Prince Charles will never be king. But the old lady there, she's like, the queen is saying, I'm going to hang on to this.
And the British press is pretty ruthless too. So that doesn't help. But whenever missteps like this happen, pretty
this
awful.
Is bad, and so that's kind of where I think our story starts, is that, you have Diana, and she did a lot of great things, like I said. So she had time. I mean, Charles was off doing his, whatever Charles was doing. And he very much left her to her own devices. And I'm pretty sure she was lonely. And there are accounts where, she had found the comfort in the arms of another, and so on and so forth. And that's all very documented and true. And Charles was Charles. I think Charles is sort of dead inside. And what else do you say?
It seemed really odd the way the situation played out, that how this marriage was arranged, how all this was set up. I don't think it was
arranged, but it was pressured, because you've got a man who's 32. He needs to be, he's going to be the king. He is going to be the king of England. This is not like, okay, son, you need to figure something out. This is, I'm sure.
Still lives at his mom's place.
Right. I'm sure the queen is like, sit down, stupid. Listen, we found a nice girl for you, and you're going to fucking marry her. Like, I can just, you want to be king? Really? Okay, listen, this is how it's going to roll. So they find Diana. She fits the bill. She looks the part. She's super sweet. They called her the people's princess, which was a big, so after their divorce, she goes off. She ended up getting, quite a bit of money, like $23 million.
I think today's dollars, it works out to like 32 million if you account for inflation or something. But it was
a lot. Well, she got that,
and a 400,000 a year. 400,000 a year.
So she gets a monthly royal allowance, plus she gets to live at. I can't remember which place she lived at. I can't remember I think it was the first home that her and Charles were at.
She kept the apartment, and she gets all the benefits of being part of the royal family. So she gets a protection detail.
Yes, she did. But
she
told them no.
Yes.
And that really ties into this, because so she says, I don't want MI6 or your Secret Service to watch me. I just don't, because she knew what was going to happen is they were going to keep tabs on her. And she figured, well, if I'm going to be leaving this family, I don't want all of your dogs,
They're not called the firm for nothing. I don't think you ever leave the royal family.
Well, this is,
unless I think it's feet first.
Yeah, I think, So she begins to see a man. I can't say his whole name, but Dodi Fayed.
Apparently, he was the second one. There was another.
There was another Muslim fellow.
Another heart surgeon. I think a heart surgeon, or
and something. He was Muslim as well. So she decides to start dating these Muslim gentlemen, and that did not go over well with the family or the firm or whomever. Right. So she's had two sons. She's had Harry and William, and then a divorce. from Charles, and now she's dating a billionaire's son because his father is like, Muhammad Al Fayed.
Yeah, it's a big player.
He owns Ritz hotels. He's a big magnate.
I think Dottie was more of a director, like
he was a producer, a film producer.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was kind of a big deal, but he wasn't, billionaire status like his father. I mean, he's heir to that. So I mean, which he could provide her with the lifestyle she became accustomed to, right? And that was one of the big things is that this Doty guy, he had the dough, like he could give her all those things, right? So. And I know that, there's a lot of talk about the royal family, but there's nothing publicly produced that say they were upset. But they
were probably not happy.
They're not happy. They're like,
just everything you hear, you've got a family of wasps. And probably not super happy about that.
And the news and the paparazzi are just eating this up. They're like, this is the best thing ever. Right? Like, because it's news. Now, Diana at this point as well, and this kind of leads into the crash and some of the other history of everything, she became, and what most people know her for is banning landmines, making it.
See our previous episode of Rise of the Machines, autonomous weapons. Landmines are the low-tech version of autonomous weapons.
That's right. Well, and that was one of her things. And before she, unfortunately, she died before she actually got to see a lot of the fruits of her labor, but it became a thing where landmines are not to be used. So there's a lot of people who believe that, these individuals who manufacture landmines didn't like her much either. Right. So Diana had a lot of people who kind of didn't like her.
I suspect she stepped on a lot of toes, just with a lot of
being her
charitable work. Yeah. Just by being her.
Not because she was doing anything, I don't think. I mean, she apparently was a really nice person. Like everybody, from staff to people she worked with. I mean, in terms of her charities, they all said she was great.
Would you want to be the person who said Princess Di was a terrible person? I don't think so.
Horrible person.
Terrible.
And she was very well liked among the royal staff, and because she was down to earth. She came from a regular job. She had,
and she apparently suffered horribly because of that. That she was such a good person, such a sensitive person, that it ate her up inside all the stuff that was going on around her.
Well, and you're seeing now with Meghan Markle and Harry and what's come out with them that, the royal family is, there's a lot to live up to. There's a lot of etiquette. There's a lot of things that, like, you lose your driver. Like, I remember they were saying, like, you lose your driver's license. So Meghan Markle's like, I lost my driver's license. Everything got taken.
They took away Prince Philip's driver's license. He wouldn't run those people over last time. So,
well, the Queen's like, you should not be driving.
You're 99. You shouldn't be driving. Oh, and you're also my royal consort. So stop driving.
So stop driving. Yeah. And he's pretty interesting. He's a little, you can't not read about these people. And, he was quite the fellow. And there was a lot of controversy about that too, about him. So this royal family is full of controversy. Like he had family that were, he's not English, right? So he had family that were actually Nazis. They were. There's a document, his sister, like, and he said, okay, well, we're no longer,
well, if you look at, so on Netflix, they've got the Lost Pirate Kingdoms. And they talk about King George being the sausage-eating whatever, and he was a German. Because the houses of Europe back in the day were all interrelated.
That's right. That's right.
So,
so he was or of that. I can't remember exactly his descent, but anyway. And that's another podcast, perhaps. But, so some of the facts, August 31st, 1997. Now, there is a timeline. And I don't really want to get into the whole, they were at the hotel. And so this all happens in Paris. I just kind of want to go from the crash. Or kind of talk about, what led up to the crash. So they're out and about, they're having dinner, they're doing all these things. There's video footage of them at the hotel. etc. They do what
There are
they're
some
doing.
very unflattering photos of their driver when he's in the car and when he's out and about. Some very unflattering photos, which again will come up later when we talk about what we think actually happened.
Yeah,
or what was officially happened.
Yeah. So and that's it. So they end up seeing that there are paparazzi. There are reporters. They get in the car. It's quite a short drive before they actually end up into an accident. So at 12:20,
and they're in Paris now. So just folks, for those who don't know,
they're in
this
Paris.
all happens in Paris. This doesn't happen in London or the UK. This is actually in Paris.
This is not in their country, which is also indicative of other operations that have taken place in other countries. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Stuff. Yeah. Don't do it in your backyard.
Don't do it in your backyard. Yeah, because if this happened in England, there would have been fucking riots. I guarantee. Anyway. Yeah. So at 12:20, they leave the Ritz, and they're trying to avoid these paparazzi.
Which, from all reports, were swarming. The driver, actually, Henri Paul, was goading them, and like every report I've read, he wasn't just meekly sitting; he was actually actively goading them on.
Yeah,
him and not the bodyguard.
Well, the bodyguard, and that, we'll get into him in a bit. There were some other things that kind of happened. Like, there's no real account once they got into the car what happens, right? Other than they drive. It's a short period. They're saying that he was speeding, but all the reports tend to vary as well. So they said he was speeding in the official report, but they can't really say how fast he was going. But it was between 60 miles an hour and 120 miles an hour, from what I've read.
And I love it. That's a massive range. It's like they were either going 60 miles or 100 or twice as fast. We're not sure.
Or twice as fast. But that's all, because if you read in different articles, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm reading the same thing. If you just Google timelines of Diana's death, you will get different reports, including times of death, from most of these things. And
they talked about the speedometer being stuck, like actually being
there's
stuck.
a reason for that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Hold on a second. Yeah, that's good stuff right there.
What is it?
That is, what's it called?
Water?
Pink Lady.
Oh, for God's sake. Is that your girly drink that you were talking about last time?
It's delicious. I'm going to get white girl drunk right now.
It's my Texas.
Salud. Whatever.
Mazel tov.
This will cure what ails you.
Hey, if alcohol wipes on your hands are good, what's alcohol in your system must be even better.
Well, we could ask Henri Paul.
Anyway. Yes. He likes the fancy liquors.
So they're driving a Mercedes S280. It's a limousine style Mercedes,
but not a huge one. Like it's actually a fair, like it's not crazy big.
Very expensive. Now, what we learn about this vehicle later on is that it did have mechanical issues, and we can come back to that. This is documented. It had problems. So this was owned by the driver, Henri Paul. So what we have in the vehicle is we have the driver, Henri Paul, who is basically the acting head of security for the Ritz Hotel, or Al Fayed's hotel. We have, what's his name? Trevor Reeves.
Trevor Reeves Jones.
Yeah, or Trevor
Not to be
Reeves.
confused with Vinnie Jones.
Vinnie Jones, right. I don't even know who that is.
He's the scary British guy who usually plays hitman, and he's... If you Google Vinnie Jones, you'll recognize him. You're like, okay, this is a terrifying guy, and I know why you play angry guys in all these mob movies.
All scarred up. So her bodyguard is there. And there's debate about who pays for this bodyguard. I'm something about national security. I'm not sure.
One of the things I had heard afterwards, because he was one of the few, he was the survivor.
He survived.
Of the crash.
He was a sole survivor.
Survivor of the crash, and he got in trouble from Dottie's dad saying he didn't do enough. But they said, your job is still here if you ever want to come back to it.
Interestingly enough, he was the only one wearing a seatbelt. Also, interestingly enough.
Yes.
Bodyguards are not supposed to wear seatbelts.
Oh, really? Oh.
That's correct. So that was one of the biggest things, is that why was he putting on a seatbelt? Why did he have a seatbelt on? So, yeah, traditionally as a bodyguard, and I didn't know this either. I was like, what the
fuck? I didn't know that either. That's news to me.
So, because if you have to exit the vehicle quickly, right, you have to be able to not mess around with buckles or whatever. It's
hard to carry Whitney Houston when you're
just
buckled
ask
in.
Kevin Costner. That guy would know. Yeah, the bodyguard. So yeah, 1223, they hit the 13th pillar. On the La Alma, Point de la Alma.
On some French road.
It's a tunnel.
French
yeah,
tunnel,
it is.
Whatever.
The Point de l'Alma. Yeah. Crashing into the vehicle. They figured that Dodie is killed immediately, and Henri as well. They do hit on their side. Yeah. And Diana is alive. And obviously so is Trevor.
Yeah, so it was Henri and Trevor were in the front, driver and passenger, right. And Dottie and Diana were in the back.
We're in the rear. That's right. And Diana was sitting directly behind Trevor, the bodyguard.
Literally the furthest spot away from the impact that you can be in the car.
Mm-hmm. So one of the curious things, so they've hit the pillar. There was first on the scene is actually a doctor. I have his name here somewhere.
It's way more research than I did. I just knew that a lot of the paparazzi they
took
turns either helping or photoing.
They didn't really do much anyway. No. So this doctor, I have his name somewhere. I'll find it. But he arrives on the scene, and he describes the scene as basically Diana is alive and she's able to speak, but there's not a lot of description. I don't know why. Apparently she had a broken arm, some other injuries. She was just in a huge fucking car accident. So 1226, EMS is called. Police arrive like almost immediately, like 1230. Police show up, start to tape off the area. 1232, fire and ambulance show up. And this is where shit gets interesting. In my humble opinion, I'm not they work on Diana, so they have different rules in France on how they transport patients. So you got to remember, this is the ambulance arrives at like 1236. They do not leave the scene with Diana until 1:20. Right? So at 1:20, the ambulance leaves for the hospital. So that's, if you look at the time frame, you're almost an hour before, they arrive.
And she was extracted from the vehicle at this point. Like, my understanding is she was not, like, it's not like they spent an hour getting her out of the vehicle.
No, but there were witnesses that said that, so there's only one picture of the actual crash, but there were witnesses that were very upset because they're saying, well, we could open the far doors, the other doors in the rear of the vehicle. So there's different accounts of, so they did have to use, I guess, a saw or something to extract her. But that did not take a lot of time. What took the time is they have a rule where they don't transport patients in France the way we kind of, bag them and ship them to the hospital right away. I mean, that's a very North America thing.
Get them stable, get them on.
That's right.
Get them out. Yeah.
So I guess from my understanding, there is a doctor that's also in with these EMS. So it's not just EMS. So you actually have a doctor as part of that group, right? So I don't know. So they were saying that, she had issues, medical.
Yeah. So she had from what I understood, she had no real visible nothing visible externally. But apparently she was really fucked up internally.
Apparently the impact pushed her heart
to the other side.
And it was bad. But that's the weird part. Like, they're actually 3 kilometers from the hospital. Like, this is how far they are from the hospital. So they leave at 1:20. They do not arrive at the hospital until 2 a.m., which to me is like, you could walk there quicker than these people drove. So what their explanation was is that, they had to stop the ambulance to administer adrenaline and all this other stuff.
Don't they normally traditionally do that on the move? Like, I don't think I've ever seen.
Once again, this is a North America, right? So this is another reason the inquest was done. So there were 2 inquests done. So 2 a.m. she arrives at the hospital. So you're like, there's a lot of time that has passed since this accident, right? And from there, she's, being operated on. The big thing is that, it took 40 minutes to cover 3 kilometers of distance. That's one of the people that, are most upset about. At 4:01 a.m., that's her time of death.
I thought her official time of death was 6 o'clock. Oh, wait.
No.
So announced her death at 6 o'clock.
They announce it.
Yeah.
Creepy thing is, she was embalmed 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Did you read that?
I did. That was, and they liken it to that the
room was too warm.
The room was too warm, but not only that, apparently the French president wanted to pay his respects. King Charles wanted to get in there. I get, like, there's just so much stuff you're hearing that, or Prince Charles, sorry.
No, so here's the thing. Her body was delivered. This is where things get weird, right? Mm-hmm. So she's embalmed. Normally you need permission to embalm somebody. This is not a thing that you generally just go and do. Mm-hmm. The royal family have their own people to do this stuff. Like, it's almost unheard of. And the royal family didn't put up a stink about this either. So there could be no autopsy typically done once the embalming has been completed.
Because it tends to ruin everything.
Well, it's embalming fluid, right? So this is interesting. Dr. Elizabeth Dion was one of the physicians, and she believed that she saw a fetus that was extracted during the time of, because she was pregnant. They believed that she was pregnant.
Which is kind of the whole end result of all this, why they think there's a big murder. Because, right. That's the motive, folks. In case you're wondering, spoiler alert, the reason why Diana was murdered was because she was pregnant with Donnie's child.
An Egyptian baby, Muslim baby. That and that is the, that's, like I said, that's where all of these inquests have basically come from, is these time frames, right? Like, and now the embalming is probably, to me, one of the weirdest, right? Because
that would be the thing I would say that really stands out as an odd, like, you don't have freezers, coolers.
So this is it, right? You're in a hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital. And what they say is that the cooling system, they tried to use dry ice. They tried to use a bunch of things to cool the room down. Like your morgue.
This is the Jeffrey Epstein thing, before Jeffrey Epstein was a thing, right? It's like, so all these things failed. Right. So your cooling system failed. You had to embalm them immediately. You were delayed getting to the hospital.
So experts have talked about this, like morticians, so the body does start to decompose, but it takes much more than a few hours, or even 6 or 7 hours.
So there is a temperature element to decomposition, and that's where you can generally, when forensics, they deal with time of deaths, they can see from the state of the decomposition and environmental situations and say,
those little flies. What are those little flies? Those little the larvae of the flies.
Yeah, if they've hatched, if they're there, they can determine all stuff. They have corpse gardens to test this. Yeah,
that's right. That's actually
freaky. True. What a terrible job tending the corpse garden.
Look at Jim over there. Tulips. Olives, Jim over there.
Check, he's a little ripe. I think he's ready for harvest.
Yeah. Well, that one's putrid. Yeah. So anyway, it's tough to, like, apparently that evening, Dodie was going to propose to them.
And apparently they were going to announce the
the birth or like the
pregnancy.
That's right, the pregnancy. So, and it was in their small circle. That was a known thing. It wasn't
I didn't
known
hear about the fetus thing. What I did hear about was that there was a positive pregnancy test. So I didn't hear about the extraction of a fetus. I heard about there was a positive pregnancy test.
Right. So the embalming would also get rid of any of the things that they use to determine.
It screwed pregnancy. Up. You couldn't run a post-mortem pregnancy test after somebody's been embalmed.
Because the embalming fluid engulfs the entire body. Right. It sinks into the tissue, which helps to prevent it from.
Well, and as we talked about how embalming works, you don't just go off and dump embalming fluid over somebody. You usually have to flush them out, and then.
Well, you do, and that was part of why the fetus was. Their organs are typically removed as well, right? So there's a lot to the.
Do you think she was an organ donor?
I don't know. Probably
because trauma-wise, I mean, imagine if you were the person who got Lady Di's eyes, like her corneas.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. But I think that they probably signed something, like as a royal member. Yeah, you don't give up your organs to anybody.
I mean, if they're protective of everything, right?
I think if it was left up to her, sure, for sure. But I feel like there is so much control in the royal family, even for the and not just for everyone but the queen, but especially the queen. Like this is a woman that, is bowed to by her own children. And that's a legit thing.
Because they still have to recognize her authority, right?
Authority. Yeah, for sure. But I thought the embalming to me was really weird.
Out of everything I've seen, I mean, and there's a lot of other weird stuff we'll get to. The embalming one was completely out of left field, weird.
Especially like medical professionals, right? I mean, these are people that it's unheard of. Like if you were to talk to any doctor or anyone that, to embalm at a hospital, I didn't even know that you could do that at a hospital. I thought you had to go to a funeral home. Where were we now?
Embalming hospitals. I didn't even know hospitals
do hospital. I mean, that's something we should check into, but,
I'm sure they can. I'm sure they have the capability. Like again, we're dealing, I think, with, as you pointed out, the North America versus.
That's right. And that's why, I mean, maybe some of this is like, so that was part of the inquest. So in 1998, the French release, it's not an inquest by the French. The French released their report on what had happened. And they were like, yeah, no, shit was good. That's the way we do things here. The timelines, they prefer to move a stable patient before there's a name for it. They call it something in the States and in Canada. Like we bag them and not bag them and tag them, but where we want to shuffle.
You're being bagged up at the ambulance.
You're basically being shoved in the ambulance. It's like that golden hour, they call it,
Yeah, and I think it's exactly called the golden hour, where you got that. That's your best chance of survival, of good outcome is getting treatment within that first hour.
Right. And she missed that by a lot before she got to the hospital. So, and that to me is a little bit, and that's why people are upset. So on top of that, then you have this guy, Tomlinson. Did you see this guy? He was the former MI6 guy. And he came forward.
Dick Tomlinson.
Tomlinson, yeah. And he's like, we've done this before. This isn't new. We killed a Serbian prime minister. Same way. We're let the fucking press eat this guy up. And he was is he I don't know what the word is, slammer hound, I don't know, trying to get,
which is funny given the fact that if he was MI6, and I think he was actually probably one of those permanently sworn to secrecy folks, and I think he did some time in jail because of violating the Official Secrets Act.
And he did, yeah. And not only that, he said, "Well, fuck you guys." So they did an inquest, an official British inquest, in 2008, right? Or no, well, it was concluded in 2008, so I don't know when it was. And it turned out they actually went through MI6 and MI5 records. And there was, as he described, an assassination attempt by MI6 on a Serbian official.
It wasn't on Princess Di, and it was the whole concept of this. This is the strobe light thing, right?
This is the strobe. This is his, so that's how he said, well, what happens is that they, and that's what it's sort of described as, is that they were, so of the 15 cameras that were up in that tunnel, guess how many were working that evening? The cameras. Yeah, fucking none.
So I remember reading about the CCTV, and what they were talking about was a lot of the CCTV footage in the area was useless because the cameras were actually doing what they're supposed to and pointing at the businesses. The tunnel one I didn't hear about. I did not hear about the tunnel.
There were 15 cameras in the tunnel, and none of them are operational. All tunnels have cameras. That's a fucking legit thing.
Sounds like Jeffrey.
And not only for work crews, right? To be able to, as a city, to be able to go, okay, what's going on in this fucking tunnel? Is traffic moving? Is traffic not moving? Is there an issue? Is there an accident?
You see that here in Ottawa on the Queensway. They'll do, you can go actually pull up live traffic cams and see what, and Toronto's the same thing.
Yeah.
North Bay probably is not so much.
We do have traffic cams at lights. So they're light cams. But we're small. We're tiny.
Wait, are they actually traffic cams or red light cameras? Because those are two different things.
Whatever. They're at the lights. I don't know.
They're red lights. So those are the time you get tickets. Yeah, that's not. No, the ones they have here, you can actually log in to the city site and pull up and see what the traffic looks like.
Nobody wants this.
Which is what you would expect to see on the tunnels.
We're not seeing much when they're our cozy little town. So and he claimed that Trevor Reese was also an informant for
an MI6 CI,
and Henri Paul also an informant.
Did not read about that. I remember reading about.
Well, that was his. To British intelligence. Yeah. So not necessarily MI6, but.
And I think he actually said during the inquest, he actually said he may have misremembered that Paul was a CI, but he did not retract that Trevor Reese Jones was a CI. Right.
And so conveniently, Trevor Reese Jones, or Trevor Reese, depending on what he remembers nothing of the crash. He was conveniently,
pretty dedicated to the cause. If Paul and Jones were part of this and said, hey, you know what? Let's run under this pillar. That's pretty hardcore.
Right. I mean, I can't see someone killing themselves for that, that reason.
When there would be so much, if you're Diana's bodyguard, you would have a lot of other opportunities.
Perhaps, but I don't know. I mean, perhaps, you could shoot her, drown her, do something. This was a known technique, right?
But they have no evidence of it having been used. So that's that.
No, just evidence that it was an actual technique.
That it wasn't. That's right. So that's good. That's good to clarify that there's no evidence saying, hey, somebody saw a big strobe light and it screwed things up.
Yeah. And the official that was killed, if anyone wants to Google it, was Milsovic.
It sounds Serbian like a common fellow. Serbian name.
He was a Serbian, yeah. So, it was written in MI6's records. And so, you kind of go, oh, yeah, he's a quack. But then you go, wait a minute. He was a quack that also knew.
This sounds like our Area 51 stuff where some of the stuff that was said, it's like, okay, the guy sounds like a bit of a quack, but wait a second. Some of the stuff he's saying is true.
Right. Yeah. So, it's weird because, you kind of look at the timelines. You look at so then Henri Paul, not Henry, I guess Henri, his blood alcohol, Henri, he's French, was 3 times the legal limit.
Which is contested because they actually said that it's like, is it? Because they used the test they used on him was not the accurate test.
Right. So they did another test from his eyeballs.
Yeah,
yes. The eyeballs. Anyway.
Apparently they did more work on Henri than they did on Diana.
There's a lot of debate that it was fabricated because for his blood alcohol level to be that high, they have the CT showing him at the hotel. Bending over, tying his shoes, no problems. Walking, no problems.
So
interacting politely.
The counter to that is that he was an
raging alcoholic.
Yeah, so he could, handle his drink. There's actually a picture, and I'll send it to you, Phil, that shows them in the car together, and you see the look on Henri's face, and you're like,
and he's like,
you're like, exactly. You're like, okay, there's a guy who looks like he's had some fun.
So, well, yeah, I have to agree. I don't know if I'm just sort of stating that, he's drunk, but he's behaving. So they also found antidepressants in his bloodstream, Prozac and something else. I can't remember.
So that's one of the thoughts is, okay, maybe he wasn't drunk, but he's mixing antidepressants and alcohol, which is good for a party, maybe not so much to get behind the wheel.
A good time, but not when you're driving at 120.
Mm-hmm. Or 60, depending on, I guess.
Yeah. So the 2008 was basically done. It's a British inquest. Scotland Yard got involved. Now, Dowdy's dad, pissed, which any man, daughter, son, he was really, upset.
So before we go to 2008, I think we need to cover the other possibility of how this accident happened.
Oh, sure.
Aside from the drunk Henri, which is not necessarily in and of itself the cause, the strobe lights won. So they keep talking about the white Fiat Uno.
There was a white Fiat Uno, as eyewitnesses have described. Mm-hmm. There was also motorcycles, or one motorcycle, as described by witnesses, screaming out of that side of the tunnel. Yeah. That is strange. And that's what Tomlinson had said, was that, the guys that were setting up, there was also paint on that white Fiat.
Yeah, so the thing is, and I'm not saying that this doesn't make it any less weird, but it might make it more innocent, that basically some dude's driving a white Fiat, the Henri's driving around kind of drunk, hits the Fiat, they clip, not head on, but they clip, right? Enough to cause Henri to lose control and hit the pillar.
Well, and they're not sure if it was a pit maneuver. There's nothing, right?
True.
There's nothing to say that, the Fiat didn't, clip.
The Fiat took damage, but not necessarily
like a pit maneuver,
class.
Right?
Yeah.
Like and what a pit maneuver is, for those of you watching, it's when the police, not that I know from experience, but they will come up behind you, they angle their car, they push the rear of your car so you actually spin out.
Yeah, they actually hit one of the corners of rear corners of your car, and then causes your car to spin.
That's right.
Yeah.
And which in a tunnel, that's a bad day for,
a real bad day.
A police officer wouldn't do that, I would hope.
Now, the question is, so this is where two other characters get involved in this complete gong show, which honestly becomes strange, like truth is stranger than fiction situation.
Yeah. So where do they find the car, Corey? How about you talk about that?
Well, okay, so they didn't technically find the car. You're talking the white Fiat Uno?
The white, right.
Yeah, they technically didn't find it. So they tracked down two possibilities.
Right.
So one was a photojournalist by the name of James Anderson. And they determined that his wife said he was at home in bed with her, so he couldn't possibly have done it. And that his white Fiat Uno was non-functional, like not roadworthy.
Right.
Okay, and we'll talk more about him in a sec.
Yeah.
The
was
other
he
one
guy bragging. Was he bragging? Was he a bragger?
Was he a bragger?
That he had pictures or something?
I don't remember reading that.
James Andelson?
Yeah, James Anders. Is it Andelson or Anderson?
I think it's Andelson.
No, maybe it's. I've got my notes Anderson, but my neighbor actually corrected me. Let's see. Andelson. Yeah, I keep saying Anderson, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, he bragged about being in the tunnel with people, and that he had photographs that would rock the world.
Yeah. I didn't read that. I didn't read that quite part about that, but he was dismissed because his car was determined to not be roadworthy. Air quotes, like it had like 100,000 kilometers on it. And his wife said, no, he was at bed with me. And they were like, I don't know, 20, 30 miles away.
Okay.
So the other one, also a white Fiat Uno, is a cab driver by the name of Levan Tran Thanh. I have no idea how to pronounce that. We'll call him Lee. Levan.
Lee man.
Levan.
Oh, Levan.
Yeah, Levan. So he wound up that night apparently getting his brother, who's a mechanic, to help him fix and spray paint his white Fiat Uno red.
I saw that. That's weird.
That's weird. That's like
that evening.
That's convenient. And he was involved, I believe, in later on, like he refused to give interviews, and he was dismissed as a suspect involved in this because Scotland Yard said, or the French police said, well, he was, off duty or something like that. So he was also dismissed as this whole white Fiat thing was kind of dismissed entirely.
Yeah. So they find one of the white Fiats, right?
Oh, did they? Is this so which one did they find?
That's the James Andelson guy.
Yeah.
So they found him, and he apparently, from all records, put 2 bullets in his own head.
Oh, yeah. This is afterwards. This is years after.
Yeah. They find him with 2 bullets that he put in his own head, they said.
Mm-hmm.
And then set himself on fire.
Yeah, lit the car on fire.
Yeah.
That he didn't have the keys for. That's important.
This is important.
And the head detached from the body, which, the head was detached from the body in between the seats, and there were 2 bullets in the head, and the car was on fire.
The 2 bullets gets me. I think that if you were to examine suicides by handgun, you would find that 1 bullet is usually all that.
And it was a temple shot too. Like this was not a.
Yeah. Right.
This was a temple. Like I guess maybe he missed the first time. He said, "Oh, better reload," and then he detached his head and lit his car on fire.
Yeah.
Without the keys. So the part that boggles my mind that makes it weird is the keys were not found.
No.
On him in this burned out car, which it's not like they would have burned up. They're metal.
The French did claim that he killed himself. So that was the official report.
The natural they said natural causes. He died of natural causes because shooting yourself in the head and detaching your skull and lighting yourself on fire
sounds
naturally.
Legit. And you can look at this and go, "What the fuck?" Like,
this was years later. This was not like immediate. So this is years later.
Yeah, and there's like, you have to say, like, what the, there's some weird shit going on.
He died. He did that. He committed suicide in 2000.
Yeah. So, and I don't know when the inquest actually started by Scotland Yard, but it was
I want to say like 2006.
And we have a link for that, you said.
Yeah, so there's actually, it's called the Paget Report, in case anybody's, it's Operation Paget. 1 second. The first report with the findings was published in 2006. And they do a follow-up. Because I remember 2008. Apparently, the script for the 2007 docudrama Diana, The Last Days of a Princess, used this.
Oh.
Access was granted to the report in 2007. So I guess 2006.
So it's public. It's public domain.
Yeah. It'll be a link so if you check the project notes or check the episode notes, you'll see the link for it, and you can go and get it yourself. It's from the BBC, so it's it's good. It's not a good read, by the way, folks. It's very dry, but they go through all these things that we just talked about.
I'm sure they do. And they said that they found that the real culprit was Henri Paul. That was the determination of their inquest, is that he was, drunk and
death by misadventure.
Is that what they called it, or was it?
No, I just think it's a good term for
killing. They called it
unlawful killing.
He was responsible for the unlawful killing of Diana and Dowdy, and that's it. So something I do find really interesting was, did you read anything about Diana's butler and the note that he produced?
No, I was reading about Soldier N, though.
Well, let me talk about the butler first, and then
we'll talk.
So she was really close with her butler. His name was Paul Brunel.
Okay, I remember the man, Paul Brunel.
So he had a letter that Diana had wrote in her own handwriting, right, to him, and she said, "I want you to keep this." And this was back in 2003. He brought it to light, and he was scared because he was like, "Look." This letter basically said, Diana says that, Charles is going to plan her death, and he's going to do it with a vehicle, right? And that he may cut the brake lines or something else, but it'll be a trauma to my head or something that will kill me. And this is in her own, and you can look this up. Like this is all over the internet. And I often thought that was funny. This letter is like dated, I think it was 96 or so. It was when they divorced, and she started to become very paranoid about everything. She would have him check the phones. She would have him check for bugs in the apartment. Like she was under surveillance, and she knew she was, and she was like, "They're gonna get me," and I think that she did believe that this is the
again, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Right? Exactly. And what was this agent? What? N?
Soldier N. So the court martial of a SAS sniper, Danny Nightingale, led to a letter written by a witness that had and sent to his in-laws. Basically, he says, so Soldier N was this guy's former roommate. And he said that, the SAS were behind the death of Princess Diana.
The SAS.
Apparently. Yeah, the SAS. I guess SAS, would you say, or just say SAS?
SAS. It's their
special
for those
forces. Who don't know, Special Air Service is what it stands for.
Yeah, it's their version of like a BR Joint Task Force or SEAL Team 6 or something.
So this Soldier N. Now I tried to find out like who's Soldier N. So if you look on the crazy board, it's got like a nondescript guy in a balaclava. So Soldier N apparently is what the UK uses to identify soldiers that aren't
assassins. What?
So they talked about, for example, if you Google Soldier N, they talk about somebody being in a Belfast massacre named Soldier N. So it's like they want to talk about an individual.
Right.
It's not quite a code name, but it's more like we're talking about an individual like a John Doe. So Soldier N. Right. That's my understanding. Feel free to shoot me a reply in the comments if you know otherwise. But
right. I mean, there's so much information. It's crazy. Like there was no short. There's no way you could read all of this. I mean, I tried to pick and choose from reliable sources as best I could. I also watched a few documentaries, which were interesting.
I didn't watch any documentaries, so that's where you and I differ. I'm more of a reader than I am a watcher or listener.
I don't usually do documentaries either. I find them pretty one-sided, but there's so many. Like if you go onto Google Prime, like Prime TV, there's probably 40 of these documentaries. Like there's easily, and all of them are a little different, including when you start to read all these articles about timelines and things like that. So I tried to pick times that were the most said.
So I wasn't super, my approach was different. I wasn't super interested in the timelines because this happened between midnight and 6 o'clock. Like that's sort of my, okay, we've got the timeline. It's all this interesting stuff around it. Again, the embalming thing.
Yeah.
Super bizarre. The suicide of this James Andelson, like that's just super weird.
The reason I thought the timelines were important is because, and I think a lot of other people thought it was important too, was that eyewitnesses saw, and they've testified that Diana was alive and coherent and basically like they didn't see what was wrong. And the amount of time it took from the time they got there to the time they got to the hospital in such a short distance, it almost makes you wonder, like, how fast can you drive 3 kilometers in an ambulance with lights on? Right? Like, could she have been at that hospital in under 5 minutes? Absolutely. And would that have made the difference?
Would that have made the difference, right? Because we're talking about the golden hour. Yeah.
Or was this planned? Were those EMS? Not EMS. Dum, dum, dum.
So,
but that's how it's easy to make this into a conspiracy.
Correct.
Is that these timelines, they are shitty.
Yep. But again, not just the timelines. When you look at all the other stuff, all the freaky stuff, like taking the timelines out of it, just the other stuff makes you put them both together. The timelines and all this other freaky stuff.
Like, it makes me feel like, there's some guy that was like, fuck, she didn't die. Like, oh my God, you idiots. right? Like, and now we have to like.
Was that guy Charles? Are you saying that guy was Charles? It's like
obviously if
sad.
you know, and if there was a conspiracy, now there's a few things, and that's why I mentioned about the landmine, like her doing what she did. This is $1 billion business, huge business, and she was not letting up. Like, and her fame and the love that people had for her made her like the ideal person to do this.
The spokesperson, completely.
She absolutely, and not only like she was making progress, and she, not that she survived to see it, but she fucking like, you know, it became a, you know.
So that's where this falls apart, by the way, for the landmine, because it's generally accepted that when somebody is this, if you kill them, you make a martyr of them.
Yeah.
Now, do you think she would have made more progress alive or dying?
I think it was meant to be, but if she died and it was meant to look like an accident, you're not a martyr. You're a mishap, right? It's no longer murder. It was an accident.
But you carry on in Diana's memory to get the landmines done.
Do you? But it's not like you were strung up and hung in front of all your people.
For your beliefs, no, but still that whole idea of death.
It's a very different martyrship. And I think it went wrong. I think it went because there is a lot of skepticism. 20 years later, you're like, or more than 24 years later.
So you're familiar with Occam's razor?
Yeah, sort of, not really.
You've heard the bastardized version of it. The simplest explanation is often the correct one.
Yeah.
The actual saying is the one with the least amount of assumptions is the correct one. And the least amount of assumptions is Henri Paul had too much to drink and hit a pillar.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the one that's the narrative that they've sold. So is it true?
There's no question he hit a pillar.
That we can agree on. We can agree he hit a pillar.
But it's the process afterwards that I'm more like, there is I can see why there's questions.
Yeah.
You know, like often you'll be like, okay, yeah, no, she died.
And can you just say incompetence? You can't. Now there is some different distinguishes, and this is where I think when you deal with, let's say people from France who are more familiar with how their system works.
Right.
They're able to say, no, this is not unusual.
And they did say that. They're like, we work on patients, and I guess that's why there are doctors that are part of the EMS team, which I'm like, fuck, you know, that's pretty interesting. You know, I mean, that maybe he was working on her. He tried to do his best, and, you know, he fucked up and failed. But the embalming, that could be somebody panicked and went, fuck, she's like deteriorating, you know, which I don't see.
Not going to get more dead.
No, but she needs to be pretty for her funeral. Right? You're going to have 1 billion people watching her funeral.
She'll be like Lennon. They'll embalm her, stuff her, and put her in a case and send her.
Is he still in a case somewhere?
I want to say, and I think there's somebody whose sole job is to make sure that, But
he stays looking like.
Do you know where Stalin is?
Hopefully dead.
He is not in a crystal case for everybody to look at. He is literally in concrete. Like they buried him deep.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people will go off and help themselves to Stalin.
Yeah. Well, he killed 20 million of his own people. So, you know.
Not necessarily beloved.
No, he starved them to death. Yeah. Well, good old Stalin. Fucking guy.
Okay, so anyway, to recap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Conspiracy. Murder or mishap.
Murder or mishap. So why did they do it?
Wow. There's a lot of reasons, but I think because she was pregnant.
With Dottie's kid, right? Right, and that's a no-no.
It's an embarrassment to the royal family. Do I believe that she was murdered? I do.
I'm more inclined to believe. I'm not passionate about it, so I believe more that Henry was drunk. I mean, I think
it was probably a little both. But I certainly think that, you know, there is more to this than meets the eye.
And you don't believe in ghosts, but you believe in that Diana was murdered?
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't
know you.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
And it's the timelines that bother me, you know. So listen, like, if this was me in the car and I'm hit, I understand. I'm nobody. You're going to be like, oh, fuck. Who's lifting the big ginger out of the car? We're going to wait for the tow truck.
Don't get the jaws of life.
Yeah. Pete, you're going to fuck your back up. Leave them.
He's dead. He's a lost god.
Crying. He's doing a lot of crying.
He keeps saying, "Oh my God, leave me alone." He seems like he's okay.
This is fucking Diana. This is the woman that everybody on the planet. She could go to like Zimbabwe and people are like, "You're Diana." Yeah. This is not the same person. This is not me. This is Diana. So for me, I'd be like, I'm going to be the doctor that fucking kills Princess Diana if I don't get her to the hospital.
See, and by that logic, when you look at stuff like that, it's the same thing like when you look at the Jeffrey Epsteins. Again, just to link it back.
Yeah, sure.
You think this is a celebrity guy you've got in the cells and the cameras don't work. You two were
very
sleeping.
Different. You just made a comparison between Diana and Jeffrey Epstein.
The sense of just once you start drawing, it's not okay. Yes, I do not think Diana was in any way involved with Jeffrey Epstein.
You may backpedal now.
What I'm getting at is when you look at the stuff that went wrong, a bunch of stuff goes wrong, and you're like, well, wait a second, all these things went wrong, like you said, with the timelines, right? They took forever to get there.
No, they got there right away.
No, they took forever to get to the hospital.
Oh, to get to absolutely.
Right? Like they took the slow boat to the hospital.
They might as well have got out and pushed.
Yeah. They had the hospital was like 3 kilometers or 3 miles, whatever that were. Like they could have literally carried her on a stretcher faster than they did in traffic.
Eyewitnesses could have taken her 3 kilometers on a stretcher quicker than from the time it took for them just to leave the site.
A tow truck could have hooked up to the wreck, brought the wreck to the hospital.
Absolutely.
Faster than that.
So, and that's where I have a problem. Do I know the conspiracy? No, it's about the simple times, and people, these are professionals. This isn't you and I trying to extract a person. Like, this is fucking, you know what I mean?
Maybe it was
this
rookie night. Job. Maybe they were all trainees. We don't know that. Maybe they were all
fucking
new.
Job.
Their first
Do
day.
your fucking job.
Your first day, you're pulling Lady Di out of a car wreck. You're like, damn it. I did not expect this.
I'd be like, I'm sorry, Diana, but we're fucking hauling ass here. Hold on.
Well, maybe they pose for pictures.
Yeah. Hold on to your shoes because we're fucking flying. Because I'm not going to be the guy known as the fucking dude that killed Diana.
Do you know who the dude is that killed Diana?
I don't.
So that's the thing, right? So and
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying though is that, do I know 100%? Of course not. Who does? But I do know that, I can look at things objectively, and then I look at this, and I didn't come into this with any horse in the race. I'm not a passionate Royals person. I barely knew who Diana was. Wait a minute.
Show them your tattoo, Phil.
Which oh. Diana, hold on a minute. She was a beautiful woman.
Okay, but respect for a second here.
I didn't have a horse in the race. So, but to look at what I've read and what I've seen, you have to question, and that's why there was an inquest, right? Like,
I think there was a couple. Like it's been there's been a few.
Yeah, there's been a few. And why is that? Well, because it doesn't make any fucking sense. And will it come out one day? Probably not. I mean, these royals, they know how to do this. This is not a new fucking thing. This isn't new. These people have killed for a lot less, and there's a reason that, everybody in the world has an Independence Day. Who doesn't have an Independence Day, Corey? Who?
UK?
Britain. You know why? Because they were the oppressor.
It was a bad time. It was a different time, Phil.
Canadian. I remember asking a guy I worked with. I felt so stupid. His name was Mark, and he was from Liverpool. And we worked weekends together. We weekend shift. And I said to him, "Yeah, what day is your Independence Day?" And he just looked at me. It's like, "Fuck, mate, we don't have a fucking Independence Day. We're Great Britain.
We're the oppressors."
Oh my God, you're right. Oh, all right, fine, whatever. Yeah, so these are not people that you fuck with. They're just not. You see the little old Queen and Prince Philip, and you go, "Oh, they look so sweet."
Just you think they could have done it differently and betterly. Like, I don't know.
Better in how? I mean, I think if it had worked out properly, and then I think what happened was she was supposed to die when they hit the pillar. I mean,
that is so an imprecise way of. Seriously though, she's in the back seat. that is such an imprecise way of like, that is not the way to guarantee a kill. People walk away from car accidents all the time.
They do. They do. However, I don't know. I think that at the right speed and no seatbelt on. So none of them had seatbelts on. It was very characteristic. No one wore seatbelts. Seatbelts save lives.
My dad used to say the exact opposite of that, which
I know.
I loved him for it, but it was ridiculous.
It's wrong. Your dad told me the same thing. And my mother said the same thing. I was like, okay, you will become part of the vehicle when you have a seatbelt on. You do not have
physics
a seatbelt
involved.
on. This is physics. Yeah.
You continue to move forward.
Yeah.
Maybe if you go in the water, okay, I get it.
Sure.
That's why you keep the seatbelt cutter in case the seatbelt thing breaks, so you can cut the seatbelt. But in most cases, you don't want to.
It's going to save your life.
It's not a good outcome.
No, and the fact is that at a high rate of speed, suddenly stopping, you're not in a seatbelt. There's a really how she even survived the weight. She must have hit the seat almost dead on. I mean. There's no other explanation.
But again, it's that whole no visible external injuries. It was all mostly it was the fact that her heart got moved. Like her heart grew 3 sizes someday just on the wrong side of her.
Yeah, we don't know. That's where we're at, right? She looked fine.
What do we know? They hit the pillar. That's all we know.
Pillar. That's it. And then you have the white Fiat, and then you have motorcycles racing out of there like something out of a fucking movie, Fast and Furious movie, and then you kind of go, what the fuck? And then they take their sweet ass time. And then she's embalmed.
Immediately. That's the part that does it for me. So, I like I said, I didn't look at the timeline. It's the embalming. I'm like, wait a second here.
Yeah. The embalming. And then she's flown almost immediately back to Britain. And yeah, they're okay with it. She was embalmed.
You and I'd be rotting on the front lawn of the hospital, Phil. Let's not kid ourselves.
Oh, dude, we'd be that big orangutan, reddish bearded guy stinking up the left wing.
You want to know what we're doing next week?
I fucking do. What are we doing?
Okay, well, in the proud to link into what you just talked about at the start about Prince Philip and his parentage, his relationships.
Oh,
let's talk about Operation Paperclip.
Yeah. Is that Prince Philip?
Well, it's not Prince Philip in particular, but it has to do with, for those who aren't familiar, Operation Paperclip is the operation to get important Nazis out of Germany before the Russians got them.
Oh,
and that's this comes into the less of the conspiracy thing, and this is an actual thing. So I like to mix things up I like to mix things up, Phil.
I like it. Because
right now, Diana, we've got an actual but a conspiracy. So we got 2 events sort of correlated, right?
For sure.
Her death and conspiracy. Paperclip, there wasn't a conspiracy. They did this.
No, there's no question. But it makes sense, right? Because Philip, he had huge German ties.
I'm sure he'd know. And I'd be curious. I haven't looked into this too much. But when you mentioned about Prince Philip's ties, I'm like, wait a second here, because it was the Allies that were involved. There were the Allies and Russia, kind of the third ally, the Ringo of the Beatles.
How many German scientists did they wrangle up?
A lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Who was that guy that made the fucking rockets?
Oppenheimer? No, that's not Oppenheimer. No, von Braun. Von
Braun, yeah.
Von Braun, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, come on over here. We'll give you. They pay us like $400 a week. Yeah, it's great. And they get the,
but it wasn't just scientists. It wasn't just scientists.
No,
because remember, the Cold War started kicking off almost immediately after World War II.
Yeah.
So there was that whole, hey, we need people who understand, who have assets in play. So a lot of intelligence officers. Anyway, I don't want to spoil next week. No. Operation Paperclip. And we're going to try and find the Prince Philip connection.
Oh, I'm sure it's there. Let's do it. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. We want
and subscribe.
Yeah,
if you can't subscribe, at least like.
At least like, because we like likes. We are guys who function off of pats on the back.
Attaboys. Don't break your arm. Don't break your arm patting us on the back.
Yeah, that's it. So my name's Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and we're the OC Podcast, and we're saying goodnight. Right? Going. Right, Corey?
Yeah. Take care, folks.
All right.
Drive
let's
safe.
Get the fuck out of here. All right. Good night.
Toodles.